So I recently made a little spec animation when I was interviewing for a company, and I thought it was just enough work in After Effects to show off that somebody might learn something from a little tutorial on exactly what I did. For background, it was a spreadsheet company, which is why it kind of looks like a spreadsheet here, but the effect I wanted to do was I wanted to create a ripple amongst the cells as the camera moved across them. So here's what it looked like ultimately. The star is just a placeholder logo for anonymity, but you can also see over here in the custom view what the animation looked like from a static point of view. So you can see this little pink camera is moving across the frame while those ripples also shift across the frame. So there's a little trick to the movement, but that's not really the focus for now. So how did I do this? Well, first of all, each of these cells, I'm gonna pop into the pre-comp, is actually just a single, spreadsheet cell. Just a rectangle with a gray border. And what I did was I applied a motion tile to each of them. And the motion tile is a pretty powerful effect if you've never used it. So how did I do this without animating every single cell on its own? Because I could have done it like that. That would have been a very tedious way to do it, and it would have sucked to make any sort of changes. So the way you can do this with a little bit of scripting, you should probably be already a little familiar with scripting if you really want to be able to get a handle on this, but I should be able to walk you through the basics here as well. So all of these cells' positions are actually controlled by an expression. So I can actually delete these. And if I just duplicate this last one, you'll see that each one of them pastes in the correct next position. So I'm going to dive into the code with you, and we're going to see exactly what happens. We're defining the main controls, and it's going to be equal to something that's in this composition, and we're saying that it's a layer in this composition, the layer named control layer, which I have right here, and that within that layer, it is the effect that is named slider control, and then it is the slider that is referenced by slider control. So if I click open control layer, you can see that I have an effect slider control and it has a value. Going back to the script, so now we're defining the element's X position. Basically, we're giving it a new position that is synthetically created. It's not, it's not the number you put in directly into the position numbers. It is a new position. So we're just going to call it the new X position. So it's X position. It's equal to something in this composition, and it's the layer that is index +1. Every single one of these layers has its own index number, and it's pretty intuitive. This is layer 1, this is layer 2, this is layer 3. And so this is saying find the layer that is one more than this layer's index. And then it finds the one that's one more than that. It finds the position of that layer, and then it finds the value at that time. This is something that you kind of need to use when you are modifying all of the values of the layers, because normally just referencing the position of a layer is going to give you the actual number that you've entered in here. You see that there are, when you click on it, you'll find the actual values that were plugged in, except when it's red, it means an expression is applied to it, and it's not going to use those blue numbers. It's going to use the expression numbers. To reference another layer's red numbers instead of their blue numbers, you need to use the valueAtTime, which is saying, find me the value at this specific time after all calculations. And so if you say valueAtTime time, it means you're finding the calculated value at the current time. You could put in different values in time and find the calculated values at different times, but that is not what we need right now. And then we say 0 because X, Y, Z is represented by 0, 1, and 2. And so after all that, we're adding 500 to it, which is the width of one of these basic cells, and that will give you a new X value. And so that's how, by simply copy and pasting and making sure that each cell is just the next layer, they know how far apart to space themselves to create this grid. So I should probably walk you through the logic of how this was going to be done in the first place, which is that this slider is going to reference an X position. As it goes, it's going to lift the cells and change their Z positions as that value passes through their X values. Like, I originally did it with a null object, but I thought a slider would probably be cleaner. Here we have the difference between the slider value and the X position of the given cell, which is pretty simple. It is the math.absolute value between the control variable and the X position of this element. Next we have, now this is a custom variable that I did again, which is slider control 2. Right now it's set to 1,000, which means that if the initial slider value is within 1,000 of the X position, then the layer's Z position will be affected. So this is saying that if the difference in distance is less than this range that we set before, then we're going to do something to the z value, and we're labeling this variable the z adjustment. And we're going to use the ease function, which is also another sort of built-in function in After Effects that is unique. So the way that ease works is that it has 5 parameters. The first parameter is the variable that it's referencing. Simple enough. The second 2 parameters are the range over which this function will take effect, and the last 2 parameters are the range of values to output. So basically from 0 to the range value, it'll go from -200 to 0. If the difference is outside of the range, it does nothing. Z adjustment equals 0. And finally, now the way that After Effects expressions are finally returned is you can just sort of say the value. And so this is a full 3D position value because you have the X value, the Y value, and the Z value. We never change the Y position, so it's just position 1 again. And the Z position is position 2 plus Z adjustment. Now remember, it's 0, 1, and 2. So that's why this is the Z position plus the Z adjustment that we made up here. So you can see that if I mess around with this slider right here, I can affect the Z values of the cells based on this slider position. And so, aside from some 3D camera work and some lighting effects, that is pretty much how I got this very basic ripple effect. You can probably see how you can adapt this in many different ways for other animations or motion designs where you simply want one layer's position to be dependent on an external variable.